firms. We have a wonderful panel of professional women who are going to help you understand not only how their firms approach the recruiting process and the training and advancement of graduates, but also to talk about personal backgrounds and sort of how we all got here. So we will first do a lot of talking and then hopefully get some questions from you to continue improving your awareness, improving your preparedness, and hopefully making you see that this is a very appealing industry for women to be in, and we want to encourage you to be a part of it. So again, thank you very much for being here. And I will start by actually just first introducing myself and then having everyone introduce themselves and talk about their firm and the graduate training program that they do. My name is Natasha Braginsky Mounier. I have been involved with Girls Are Investors for a couple of years now, but I've just become co-chair along with Anne-Marie. And we're very excited to get bigger and help more women on this journey. I have been in investment management for about 25 years. I've recently become a retired partner from Capital Group, where I spent most of my investment career. And I actually discovered investing thanks to a business school professor, and it took a while. And so that's why I feel passionately about helping women understand this sooner, because it is really a very stimulating and diverse and, well, I would say rare field where you get better with age and where opportunities are multiplying for women very rapidly. And no matter what your background is in terms of academics or skills, there is a way to be very successful in it. And just for full disclosure, I'm not a math whiz. I majored in economics and international politics. So there was no sort of quant genius behind my career planning. So why don't we start with Rebecca, if I could ask you to introduce yourself and the firm and your graduate recruiting program.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca. I recently just graduated from Warwick University. So I graduated in 2020. I also did my year abroad at the University of California, Los Angeles. And straight out of university, I joined Mondrian Investment Partners on their graduate program. Our graduate program is a rotational graduate program. So all of our graduates start in the middle or the back office. Our graduate program is based around 3 streams. Those 3 streams are business development, investment operations, performance and technology. And you can either rotate within those streams or you can rotate through the stream. So I'm rotating within the business development stream. So I began my Mondrian Investment Partners career in the compliance team. Here, I was very much focused on the trading aspect, monitoring trading and regulations, ensuring that our trading fits clients' investment guidelines, a lot of regulatory research, and also a large focus on ESG and Brexit. I then just completed that rotation and joined the legal team a couple of months ago, where here I've been interacting with the wider business, negotiating client IMAs, working on brokerage and trading agreements, fund launches, and securities litigation. I think we're going to talk about recruitment a bit later on, but as part of the graduate program at Mondrian, we all complete the IMC, which is the investment management certification. And from there, all of the graduates will then take a further professional qualification. So I'm currently taking the CFA. My level 1 CFA is coming up in November, actually, this year.
Actually, maybe you can just decipher what those acronyms mean.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
IMC
yeah.
and CFA.
Yeah, so the IMC is the investment management certification. This is a foundational program which really gives you the basics into investment management. There's 2 papers. So there's the regulations paper, which is an introduction to investment management regulations in the UK, really focusing on like the role of the FCA, the laws in investment management. And there's quite a large section here on tax and investment tax as well. And the second paper is investment in practice. So here it's a really like overview to the investment management industry, an understanding to equities, fixed income, at quite a basic level as well. This was really useful to me because I actually had history and politics at university. So coming into the investment management world was slightly different. I did intern in investment management, but still I didn't learn as much as I did just taking the IMC. And then the CFA is the Chartered Financial Analyst Program. This is a program made up of 3 very long exams, currently taking level 1. And yeah, it's kind of similar to, I would say, degree level studying. So the IMC is, I would say, like, the standard is quite high. You know, the pass rate is slightly higher, but the CFA, there's definitely a very large jump. That's not to say that everyone in investment management has to do the CFA. It's not a requirement at Mondrian. It is a choice. And then we also do offer other professional qualifications, including the ACA, which focuses more around accounting, and the CIMA, which again is focused more on accounting as well.
It's great. So you continue to develop your skills and knowledge, and Mondrian is obviously supporting and paying for that.
Yes,
and how long is the graduate program overall, the rotation program?
Our graduate program is 23 months, and that's made up of 2 rotations. So your first rotation tends to be 11 or 12 months, and your second rotation is again a year. And then after those 23 months, there is the opportunity to rotate into our front office teams, which most of our graduates tend to go into our international equity team as analysts.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rebecca. You got us off to a very good start.
Thank you.
Nikki, can I ask you to go second?
Sure. So my start was slightly different. I've been in the industry for coming up to 20 years now. I, like Natasha, started in investment banking, which is also one of the only routes to get into the industry. Not that I knew at the time that I didn't know what I wanted to do, and then investment banking seemed like the one open door to everything. And within 1 year within the investment bank, I tried to rotate out of the advisory team to go into the investment management team. And at the time, they were quite kind and flexible to allow me to do that, which is where after a year rotated into it, and effectively have been in the business ever since then. Went to business school in the meantime by choice, and still stayed in the industry, having thought about all the options. And have been in it, as I mentioned, ever since. I'm in a very particular area of investment management because I work in private equity, which means effectively I use funds to effectively go buy different things. And I specialize in an asset class called real estate, which means if you look all around you, I specialize in buying shopping centers, big buildings, anything that is built around you. I may take a look and think whether it's worth for me buying it or not, or worth for my investors for me to take a look at it and buy and try and make a good return on it. Our recruiting program is also quite diverse. We don't have a rotation program per se, but people come in on either the public side investing. So as I mentioned, so it's PIMCO, you end up you have a big bond trading platform, and then you invest similarly to what Rebecca is doing, this investment management platform. She just mentioned international equities. We focus mainly on international bonds. Or on the private investment side, people come in, there's a 10-week fundamentals program where you do on-site effectively additional training, and then you join the teams that you go into. Depending on which teams you're in, there's more or less rotation, but you tend to join your team, and eventually if you want to rotate, it's a negotiation within the firm, and it tends to be quite common, be it rotate to another office because you want to see our head office is in Newport Beach in California, or you want to see the New York office. There's different options you could do.
Excellent, thank you. Devin, how about you?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name's Devin. I sit on the asset management campus recruiting side here at Fidelity. So here to represent the recruiting perspective. I sit in our Boston office, so I think it's worth mentioning that Fidelity Investments is different than Fidelity International. So Anna and myself are here representing Fidelity. I've worked at Fidelity for just about 3 years at this point. I joined out of undergrad into their HR rotation program, and then spent a year supporting our consulting recruiting. So MBA and undergrad level consulting recruiting for our internal consulting group. And then as of recently have joined the asset management side and recruit for a variety of investment research programs, both intern and full-time, for both our domestic and international offices.
Excellent, thank you. And Anna, since you work together.
We do, yes. Hi everyone, great to have you here. I'm Anna White, I'm an ESG analyst at FMR. I actually started out as an equity research associate, that was about 2.5 years ago, and that involved researching stocks all from the same sector, and I'd either recommend them to buy or recommend selling them to portfolio managers. And this was a lot of responsibility early on, but I think it taught me a lot, and it was just such a great start to my career. And I am now an ESG analyst, which is slightly different. So I'm doing less financial and less sort of accounting analysis, and more looking at environmental, social, and governance factors, which are still financially material to a company's performance. But you could say that the topics are perhaps a bit broader, because I'm researching things from carbon emissions to cybersecurity. It's constantly changing. And in terms of the sort of recruitment process at FMR, there are all sorts of streams, but I'm in the London office, and typically what we do is in equity, you're an associate for 3 years, and then you can be promoted to an analyst. And the difference there really, it's more just that you're covering bigger profile companies the more senior you are in your career. And in fixed income, it's pretty much the same. So after 3 years, you might be reviewed for that analyst promotion.
And so is there a formal training program within equities, for example, when you join?
Absolutely, yes. And this really benefited me because I studied theology. And sorry, I think there's a helicopter outside in case it's a bit noisy. Yeah, I studied theology, so the training was really beneficial to me. We had summer trainings when we first started. We had 3 months in the Boston HQ and got all sorts of training from accounting, valuation. And then on the job, you have mentoring and training if you need it.
Excellent, thank you. Fantastic. I think we haven't had Adi join yet. Hopefully that will happen in the course of the webinar. Well,
I'm on.
Oh, you're on. Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad you could make it. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, I had
the floor is yours.
Cool. Well, hi everyone. My name is Adi, and I am a second-year analyst at Aberdeen, which was previously called Aberdeen Standard Investments. So yeah, we're a UK-based fund manager doing about $500 billion in assets. And, I've been here a year. I interned with this firm when I was at university, and then subsequently joined their graduate scheme. And I work within the fixed income department, which is, in its simplest form, you're sort of lending to, corporations, governments, et cetera. And the day job is to sort of decide what's a good organization to lend to and what's not so good organization to lend to, simply speaking. So yeah, it's been great so far. It's very similar to some of the other descriptions of the other programs. In terms of the recruitment process, it's very similar to the others on the buy side. I guess one thing that's different, that I found different when I was interviewing for Aberdeen, was they tend to focus a lot on your soft skills rather than asking you these tricky accounting questions in an interview, because they try to take in people from different backgrounds, and then once you're here, once you've been selected, you get trained mostly on the job. So 90% of the training is just you getting stuck right in and learning, and then the other 10% is these ancillary courses on the side, and the CFA as well. Actually, that's something that we're encouraged to do and that we need to get done. But yeah, overall, it's been a great experience and happy to be here.
Oh, that's fantastic. But just to follow up, so you were first an intern there, and then you went into the graduate program. So for those associates who are hired directly into the graduate training program, is there a difference, or is it mainly from the internship pipeline that permanent hires are made?
I would say 70% is from the internship, but there's always spots for people that are wanting to join directly. And the recruitment process is the same. For interns, you know, you've spent sort of 10 weeks at the firm already, so that in itself is an interview. And for the new joiners, those who haven't interned, they start from the interview process. So they have that formal process where they'll have 2-3 rounds of interviews and then get chosen if they're, you know, if they're worth it. So that's the difference, I would say. But yeah,
Excellent.
mostly from the internship.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's perfect, because I actually wanted to highlight that at Gain, we have a summer internship program for 2022 that is proving to be wildly successful this year. We have 125 internship slots available, and the deadline for applications is in a week. So you've heard it from Ivy. I'll say it again. The best way to learn is with a hands-on experience of being an intern. Last summer, we only could find 25 internships. Obviously, because of COVID, firms were not sure what they want to do in terms of in-office or virtual, and it was complicated, but everyone seems to be getting back on track, and we have 125 opportunities with 90 firms. So if you are going to be in the UK next summer, please hurry up and apply. The deadline is in 7 days. So with that, I also want to encourage our participants to ask questions on the chat. That will be the best way for us to see if there's something that you want to talk about that we're missing in this conversation. There are about 30 people online, so we may not get to all your questions, but please send some along the way as we continue to talk. So going back to Rebecca, with Mondrian having a very comprehensive rotation program, when you first start to look for graduate students, what are some of the characteristics that you're looking for to see that people will thrive and succeed in this environment?
Sure. So our recruitment process, it's quite structured, our recruitment process, but I think throughout the whole process, they're looking for someone who really has a desire to learn. We're quite a small firm. There's like 200 of us across London and Philadelphia. So you need to have a desire to learn. You need to want to pick up work. It's not going to be given to you on a plate at Mondrian. There is so much exposure to work with like senior management. You have to want to be able to do a lot of that. I think at Mondrian, they're not just looking for brains, and you really do not have to come from an economics or a maths background. I've come from history and politics. The graduates that joined in my cohort came from languages. Some did come from maths. But they're not just looking for brains. They really are just looking for a personality as well, and that desire to learn. I think in our recruitment process, it might be worth touching on that we did have quite a long recruitment process. So you were expected to take things like the numeracy exams and the literacy exams. We also did have the opportunity to give presentations in our first or second round interviews. So there they were looking for, speaking skills. How do you present to an audience? How do you explain ideas? And those presentations weren't just on investment management. You did have the opportunity to talk about other things as well.
Excellent. Would others like to chime in terms of the characteristics for the recruiting process? And especially keeping in mind that a lot of the applicants may not have sort of a STEM background and may only really have studied humanities.
I'm happy to take a stab at it. Look, I think where you come from as what you've studied is less important than I think showing an element of curiosity for where you are at that point for the job itself. So I will say that regardless of where you come from, show that you're interested in what you do, your passion for what you do. I think, investment management or some of the finance roles sometimes get a reputation for not being creative, which is not true at all. Within our own roles, we have a certain sense of creativity that we need to put through to it. So having people who are very passionate at what they do is great because it gives you a sense that, they're going to apply that passion for the job that they'll have. So that's great to just be enthusiastic about what you're studying and why you're studying, and then show curiosity about why you want to do an internship or you want to get that investment management job. So some basic things, I think you just have to prepare for an interview to prepare well. Get to know the company, look at the website, try and understand what the background of the company is and what you're likely to do. People don't expect you to know everything. People just hope and expect you to be curious. I think that's the most important thing is curiosity and show an interest.
Devin, how do you look at it from the professional recruiting perspective?
Yes, I was just going to add on there. I would say in this industry, we look for people of all sorts of different backgrounds. It's much less about coming from an econ background and more about, again, what Nikki said, showing that passion for this industry and being able to explain why you are so passionate and how your coursework or your major contributes to that and is able to give you some sort of intellectual curiosity and a different perspective. Unique perspectives are very, very valued. People want to hear why you think differently about whether it's a stock or a bond, but just bringing that creativity and the passion and the eagerness to learn are extremely important.
But, you know, for those who don't have a background in finance, it might sound daunting to demonstrate passion in something that they don't necessarily know a lot about. So what do you think is a good way to prepare for these interviews and to think about the graduate scheme as something that you build knowledge up for?
Yes, I would say there's many ways that you can demonstrate that passion. I would say a majority of campuses have some sort of finance or investment club that you can get involved in. So that's always a plus. But also just in your free time reading investment related articles, the Wall Street Journal, there's tons of great books out there. So again, just showing that you've taken that initiative. It doesn't need to show up in a finance background. I speak with students all the time that don't have relevant internship experience, but I've had great conversations about some reading that they've done or clubs that they're in, personal investing that they do, people that have inspired them. So it's a very flexible space to be able to show that and prepare for the interview.
I would also say, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Nikki.
I would just also say I'm actually, when I interview people, whether it's for internship or for, I'm less interested to know that they've done this for the past 25 years and they've put all their savings in it, but I am interested in whether they are asking questions and they're really curious about it. And, you know, if you come into an interview and you have questions for me about why is this versus that, right? If you even ask me, if you have a query about the industry, query about instruments also, right? Bond versus equity or different things that you've looked into it a little bit and you want to learn about it and you want to discuss it, that's interesting. I think what Devin is alluding to also with the clubs are helpful because if you don't want to spend a lot of time talking about stocks and bonds in different industries, well, the advantages rather that the investment management industry is very broad, right? We mentioned stocks and bonds. I cover a part of the investment management industry that has a complicated name, but it actually just means all the other stuff, which is called alternative investments. So real estate falls within alternatives. So there's a huge plethora of different things that you can do within the industry. You just need to be, if you're curious enough about it, that will lead you a long way.
So you're not supposed to be an expert, but you need to know enough to ask good questions.
Correct.
Right. And actually, Anna, maybe you can also chime in on this because this is a recent experience for you. How did you prepare for the graduate program and how do you think others can be prepared?
Sure. So given that, you know, I didn't study finance or maths, I think, you know, I actually saw it as a plus because, you know, we're constantly talking about diversity and looking for differentiated thinking. And a lot of the job I find is thinking about, you know, what is the market expecting for a certain company and how can one be different? And it's not about being different for the sake of it, but if you can have an edge, then I think that's something you can really articulate in an interview and show, you know, maybe you're thinking about a company a bit differently compared to what's being said in the news. So I think that helped me in my preparation was just, you know, reading the news, looking at all these very hyped, you know, tech companies and thinking, you know, is there a bit too much hype here? And just really trying to almost connect the financial world, in inverted commas, to society. And I think that's what, you know, made the job really rewarding for me, is that it's not isolated, not just looking at balance sheets and, you know, income statements and so on. It really connects to what you see day to day as a consumer, for example. It lets you understand how businesses work day to day. So I think maybe showing that awareness, and also just showing how you're a differentiated thinker through lots of different means of preparation, be it reading or, you know, networking on LinkedIn and going to events like this.
And during the 3 months that you were in Boston for the start of the program, what did you do exactly? What does it encompass?
So this is about 3.5 years ago. So it was about 2 months of formal training. So, you know, basic accounting, valuation, different case studies. And then I think month 3, we were given our stocks, and we were kind of, you know, told to ramp. So do some initial preparation. And then after that, it's, you know, go, go, go. So you're sort of meeting with companies and so on. But you definitely have a good 2 to 3 month sort of cushion to really get familiar with the job and, you know, seek support from whoever. But that mentorship is ongoing.
But it sounds like the first couple of months, you're almost like going back to school.
Exactly.
So maybe you can talk a little more about that in terms of the structure, like who teaches the classes and how do you learn basic accounting?
Yeah, so it was 9 to 5, you know, and those hours are very, were very good compared to the beginning of the job, at least for me, given I was, you know, learning a lot on the side. So it's 2 months of 9 to 5. We had lecturers come in from Babson University. This is in Boston, and it'll be a lot of, you know, us on our laptops or Excel, you know, models, and then teaching us how to connect the different, you know, financial items and so on. And then we begin homework to bring, you know, in evenings.
Wow, exciting. This is very, very comprehensive. Good. Ajay, maybe I can turn to you now to describe sort of what's a typical day when you start out as an analyst. So if there's no such thing as a typical day, then what's a typical week?
It's a good question. When you start out, I guess, yeah, the team and the firm doesn't expect a lot anyways, you know, because they know it's sort of a fresh slate, and yeah, you're left to your own in terms of like the work you've been given. It's like, go do it and then come back and we'll sort of give you feedback on it, and we'll take it from there. But in terms of a typical day, you know, I guess in finance in general, just in business, you know, you have loads of meetings every day. So you start off with a morning meeting. That's when you're briefed about what's going on. So in investment management, you have a lot of new deals coming through that you need to sort of look at, new companies that want money. So the morning meeting constitutes a lot of that, any new deals that have come through in the morning that you look at.
Who attends that meeting and who presents? What's the forum?
It's the wider team. So let's say I'm a part of a team of 10, the 10 people will join that morning meeting. And that's where you start off your day, so to say. You go back to your desk, you work away until sort of 9, 10, 11 o'clock. Then you have another meeting and then another one after that. But essentially what I'm trying to get at is that the goal at the end of it is to produce some output that you can present to the same 10 people and come to a decision together. Now that may involve a lot of personal work, that may involve a lot of collaboration with 2 or 3 others in the team, that may involve speaking with company management, like some of the other panelists have said. And it's a combination of all of that that makes your day, so to say. And one of the other things that I've found is, aside from the core job, there's always things lurking in the background that need to get done, whether that be a compliance test, whether that be a long-term project or some work that needs doing. So it's balancing the two. Right. And that's what gets you through it.
So if I can summarize, you spend some time receiving information from others to have sort of a pieces of mosaic about what's happening in the world, so you have a view. But then you have to do your own research to come up with your judgment and evaluate the risk and reward in an investment and share that with your team. Right. And because you're in fixed income, it means you're looking at bonds, which are essentially securities that represent loans to companies. So you're assessing the risk of that investment. And
That's right.
Did you
Yeah.
choose to be in fixed income? We just had a question come in actually in the chat. Did you choose this to be your asset class, or were you put into it?
Yeah, I chose for it to be my asset class. Well, I put forward a preference, and they were kind enough to give me a seat. And that's for multiple reasons, I guess. If the audience is interested, we can go into after. But I've always had a preference of debt over equity, right from when I was an intern. So I was quite glad that when I got the job, I was asked to continue within fixed income, and I've been there since.
That's great. And is that typical that Aberdeen would allow a graduate to choose where they want to go if they've already been through the internship program?
So at the internship stage, you sort of get to put in a preference as to which bit or which asset class you'd like to go into. But equally, you can just say, I'm interested in investments, and then they will place you. So it really does depend on the person. If they have a seat and for you, so they just assign you it, and then you start, and over the course of the next 10 weeks, it is as much a test for yourself as it is for them to see, can this person do well in this asset class? If yes, then sort of continue on. If no, then maybe yes, get them the grad scheme, but go into another asset class. So it does vary.
Wonderful. It's very helpful. And Aberdeen is actually one of the firms that's having internships through GAIN next summer. There was a question in the chat as to what the other firms are. There are lots, so just have a look on our website. And many of the firms are actually on this panel. So we're very, very grateful for the caliber of opportunities we're able to secure for the GAIN network. And Rebecca, maybe you can talk also about your day-to-day and how that evolves over time.
Sure. So obviously my day-to-day when I started at Mondrian was purely from home. We are now in the office. And again, like Adi said, it's a lot of meetings, starting the day with morning meetings, catching up on what's going on in the team and also in the wider business. Because I work in legal, we're constantly working with our new clients and negotiating IMA. So every time there's a new client looking to fund, we're reviewing their IMA, looking at the details in it, speaking to those teams that it's going to affect. As for brokerage and trading, we're constantly working with our traders and our investment support team. There's been a lot of work at the moment looking to invest in markets in China. That obviously has a lot of legal implications. So we're looking at those. In terms of like day-to-day hours, that can really vary, especially when there's new clients. When we are working with new clients or signing new agreements, we are working a lot longer hours, especially because I'm studying at the moment. So I am doing the CFA in the morning before I start work. I go to my morning meeting. I then work until about 6 o'clock, and then I'm studying again till about 10 o'clock. That's not every day. So I think there's the assumption that you have to work long hours in investment management, and that isn't the case. It's not an expectation, especially at Mondrian as well. We do have a really good work-life balance, and that is encouraged to get involved in social aspects as well. In terms of like social life in the day-to-day, there's like weekly football tournaments, I believe. There's other things, there's like drinks, and there's more sports activities. So yeah, my day-to-day generally varies quite a lot, especially since I moved out of the compliance team where I had really early morning starts because we were working a lot more with the markets, whereas now in legal, we're working more towards the demand of our clients rather than the demands of the market.
That's fascinating. You've had a wonderful experience. So it sounds very full on.
Yeah.
Is there like a go-to person for you? Is there a formal or informal mentoring process that helps you navigate this?
So do you mean like for the graduate program or for my role? So for the graduate program, we're all given buddies, and those buddies purposely don't work in the department that you work in. So my buddy is actually an investment accountant. So the reason that we put you with like different people is so that you get an insight into other teams that maybe you don't really speak to, because in the legal team, we don't really work with the accountants that often unless it's for tax issues. So you have a buddy, and I've also just been given a buddy based on the graduates that came in this summer. Your buddy you can talk to. I think we meet up like once a month just to catch up on like work-related issues, but also non-work-related issues. My buddy doesn't do the CFA, but the buddy that I'm mentoring does, so you can help them with things like that as well. We also have quarterly HR reviews, and we fill out these like packs essentially every quarter to reflect on like what you've been doing this quarter, what soft skills trainings you've been doing, and we just catch up with HR to make sure that everything's going okay. I should also add that like part of the graduate program is lots of soft skills training. So every quarter we do have different kind of half-day classes. Those have been things like presentation management, assertiveness, time management. So things like that that just provide you with skills that just aren't purely investment management focused, but also important to your career.
Excellent. Sounds like a great process.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Anna, what about you? As an ESG analyst, I think it's particularly interesting also to hear your experience and how it's different from having been a pure equity analyst.
Sure. Is it helpful if I go through my sort of day-to-day, or should
Yes,
I go through
please.
the role? Yeah. So I'd say my job's sort of split into 3 parts. So the majority of it is research. So I'm given companies from different sectors, and I have to rate them all on ESG on a comparable basis. So that's part of my job. Second part is company engagement. So not only from our side, talking to companies, trying to figure out which ones are legitimately good on ESG and which ones aren't, because there's a problem in the market called greenwashing. So companies will often pretend to be sustainable,
Embellish a bit. Right?
Exactly, embellish, or be even investigated by regulators for embellishing. So there's that. And then so us finding out on their side, then also companies will ask us, what do we want in their sort of ESG strategy. So because a lot of the time we can be a big shareholder in companies, so they really want to hear from us, how to improve. So that's really rewarding. And then the third part is talking to clients. So on the fixed income side, I've been asked to sort of talk to our clients about, what FMR is doing for ESG. So it's very varied. I'd say the majority of the time it's spent researching ESG issues that are relevant to different sectors, which change because, for a consumer company, something like packaging will be very important, but then for a tech company, you might say cybersecurity is very important. So the issues vary per sector.
So you're a generalist. You're not focusing on a sector. You're focusing on the thematic issues around ESG across sectors.
Exactly. And then rating different companies within various sectors on ESG. So I'm saying, of all the supermarkets, for example, which one might be the best on ESG and so on.
And this was a scoring or rating methodology that's internal to Fidelity, right? So it's a proprietary methodology that you had to learn and apply to these investments.
Exactly. So we do have an internal system, but we're also encouraged to think differently and, challenge the system. So, sort of differentiated thinking is really encouraged as well.
How did you learn about ESG, given that your background is being an equity investor?
Sure. I think it comes from 2 points. So just a personal interest of mine. I've always been really passionate about climate change and would always try to bring it into work discussions. So I think it was partly that, but then also Fidelity accelerated its ESG efforts towards the end of last year, and a position opened up, and my boss said, we think you'd be really suited for it. I've read a few books, like there's Alex Edmonds' Grow the Pie, which is a fantastic read. It looks at responsible business. So a mixture of various things.
Excellent. Actually, a question on the chat just came in for you specifically. Do you think you'll want to specialize down the line or remain a generalist?
For now, I think, because I'm still quite early in my career, I appreciate being a generalist. But further down the line, it's really hard to say. Perhaps specialize, but I think I'll definitely want to be an ESG analyst, for several years.
Well, another question that came in that I think is a good time to address now for everyone is, what makes your firm special? Why did you choose this particular firm? Maybe what's the one thing that you think is a standout quality, cultural or, other, that makes your organization particularly a great place to work for? Nikki, I'll go to you.
I was hoping to get some time. So why I joined the firm in the first place is for two reasons. I'm going to try not to be too technical, but one of it was really for the breadth of what the firm does. And within investment management, as I mentioned, there's a number of things that you can do and number of different capital pools, right? We tend to invest. One of the reasons why I chose the job in the first place was you get to take the decisions, the investment decisions, as Anna mentioned. You look at, you do the NAD too, you do the analysis, you say whether you would recommend a buy or not, and that's an internal recommendation because the firm itself does the buy. And so I was very excited about the idea that you're making an internal recommendation, whether it's to an investment committee, whether it's to your teams around you, and you guys, the firm does the buy as opposed to recommending to an external person to do the buy or not, which I thought was particularly fun. And one of the reasons I chose PIMCO is it's got a huge breadth of different types of capital where you can do this buying recommendation, and you can look at a number of different things all within the firm. So I thought that was a fun place to be because you can do a number of different things, but you're still in the same home.
Right.
That's
you
one.
like the fact that your ideas were actionable and that PIMCO has the magnitude and scale to make very big investments.
Very big and very diverse investments. So you can do very secure investments, you can do more risky investments. Either way, whatever if you think it's a good deal, you find ways to do it. So that's what I found particularly fun and enjoyable. Particularities about PIMCO, look, and it's difficult given the panel that we're talking to. Look, we're a very big and global firm, which is great because it means that you're talking and you have your set of colleagues are also massively diverse and from all over the world. And every single problem I think we've heard from, Rebecca too, and Anna and Addie, that you study on the job effectively because you have a continuing education. And everybody here is really trying to learn new things on a daily basis. So you speak to your colleagues, there's no one who, even a CIO, technically knows better, but is there sitting, we have these quarterly meetings where it's a huge question to the firm. You have these big questions that are posed and big conferences, and everybody is asked to speak up. It's a continued effectively seeking for whether it's the truth or really a continuous education, and everybody's here to be a daily scholar. Learning.
Yeah, it is very stimulating to be in a global firm for that reason, I suppose. And, and maybe occasionally you also get to go to California, right? To visit headquarters.
Yeah, without COVID. Yeah.
Exactly, at some point. And Adi, I think that would be a great time for you to talk about Aberdeen. What made you go as an intern and then stay on?
Yeah, sure. So what I really like about Aberdeen is the amount of responsibility you get as someone who's quite young in the firm or new to the firm. And, this has been true for me as well as the other grads. I mean, I remember when on my first day, I joined at about 8-9 o'clock, and by 10, I had my first sort of project that I needed to sort of get stuck into, which seems like it's a lot to take up, but as we've discussed again and again on the panel, it's probably one of the best ways to learn. You sort of make a mistake or two, but you always have your boss and everybody else in the investment committee sort of giving you feedback and getting your opinion on the investment. So whilst you are tasked with the job, the decision to make an investment is collective, and I think that's true across the board for the different firms. The other thing that I really like is the organization is quite flat in that we operate a very sort of lean model. There's, most people in the firm are generalists in a way. So for me, I cover 3 or 4 different sectors, and then the other analysts on the team do the same thing. So what that means is very often you find yourself being the person responsible for a particular sector or a particular niche, and the expert on it, regardless of how senior you are in the firm. That's a lot to take in, but again, it's very good for development, according to me. So that's what I really like. And finally, people are just very, very nice. Surprisingly so. You have this expectation that it's going to be a tough tough working environment in finance, but it just isn't. I haven't experienced that at all. So it's good to be working with people that are like-minded and that respect you, and that's why I've stayed with Aberdeen since I started my working life.
That's great. I think it's a very good point. Investing is inherently a fairly collaborative sport because it's a very long-term endeavor, and pretty much everyone gets better at it over time. So there's a natural reason to collaborate and share knowledge. And even though you have a lot of individual responsibility for your investment decisions, there is a sort of a positive sum game approach in teams in terms of how to go forward.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not just Aberdeen. That's true across all the firms that are here and beyond.
And Rebecca, how did you decide on Mondrian, and what makes you still excited to stay there?
So I didn't particularly want to join a very big firm when I was applying to graduate programs. I liked the fact that Mondrian was quite small. I also liked that Mondrian's graduate program was very structured. So that you're going to go in, you're going to do your rotations here and here, and then you have the opportunity to rotate to the investment teams at the end. I think another thing I really liked about Mondrian was the culture. Everyone at Mondrian is very nice. They're very welcoming. You can kind of talk to anyone. And also the fact that you have such wide exposure to senior management and even people like the CEO and the COO. So the COO interviewed me in my final round. And we also have opportunities we have something called the CEOs and the COOs challenge every year. So you give a presentation to the CEO or the COO about very different things. So you have that culture where you can kind of talk to anyone, whether they're senior management or they're junior. I also like the very social aspect at Mondrian. We have quite a large graduate intake or junior intake, so you're always with people who are kind of in the same boat as you. And also the fact that they had that aspect, they were going to fund the professional qualifications as well, so there is that support there as well.
That's excellent. So it sounds like you had a pretty good idea what you're looking for in terms of size and culture of a firm. That's really important.
Yeah.
How did you develop that sense? How did you know?
So I did my internship at a fixed income asset manager, again, a similar size, maybe slightly bigger, but their London office was a similar size to the London office I'm working in now. I really liked the fact that it wasn't a huge bureaucracy. You could talk to the senior staff, and it wasn't like a hierarchy as such. So I knew that when I was looking for graduate programs the year after, that's the sort of program I was looking for. I also knew that I wanted I didn't necessarily want to go straight into the front office as an analyst. I didn't mind doing like the compliance and the legal role and the finance roles before, because I feel like I've learned so much doing that. And again, the culture was just another factor for me. Like I knew that I wanted to work at a firm that had quite a flat culture and again, a very social culture, which Mondrian has.
Excellent. Thank you. And Anna, now we're back to you with Fidelity. And how did you choose to work for essentially a foreign firm, and you went into the equity role and then changed for ESG? What's kept you going, and you seem very, very happy and engaged?
I think my answer is quite similar to Annie's. So a lot of it is to do with the autonomy that we're given. So even in the office, we haven't been actually back to the office yet since COVID started, but before that, there was no concept of FaceTime. People weren't saying, why aren't you at your desk at 3 p.m. or you were very much trusted to do your job. And as long as you did your job well, then you weren't told exactly how to do it. And I really appreciated that sort of freedom, because it was just expected that, if you're not at your desk, you'll be out doing research or you'll be, here and there. So I really appreciate that aspect of it. And also the fact that you just get so much responsibility. So at 22, I'd be having meetings with CEOs and asking them various questions for an hour, which was just such a privilege. I once had someone say, "Oh, you're like the age of my daughter," which was quite embarrassing at the time, but nonetheless, I think really highlighted just how lucky I was to, have that kind of access. And then secondly, just the culture is wonderful. The people are great. We have an effort called One London in our London office, and that's about really enriching the culture of the office. So, for mental health initiatives, we're going to be reading Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig, which is a really great mental health book. And we've got lots of projects like that. We've got a sports day coming up. So yeah, lots of very exciting things going on, and that's really why I've continued working there.
It's great. And you're happy to be back in the office, it sounds like.
Yes, as of next week.
Excellent. Well, Devin, maybe from your perspective, you could give some advice on sort of best practices for graduate recruiting. So what would be a good way to prepare, and how you think of Fidelity as being, an attractive place to work?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think kind of the main factors that differentiate Fidelity, one is the mobility opportunities. We, of course, are a larger firm, but even just within asset management, there's so many different career paths that people can take. You're not really siloed into one place, and as a perfect example of that, you can go the more traditional analyst portfolio manager route or branch out a little bit. So I think people really appreciate those opportunities. And then the resources that we do have at Fidelity, the access to management, for those of you that are a little bit newer to this space, when investors are looking to make recommendations on stocks, one really important factor is talking to management and founders of the companies. So we have great access to do that. And I think from talking to some of the newer associates, that's something that has really stood out to them. And then best practices for preparing for interviews. As I mentioned earlier, just making sure that you are up to date on what's going on in the markets and are able to speak to some degree to the trends that are going on, and ultimately why you're interested in this industry and how your major or coursework may intersect with some element of investment management. So demonstrating those components and then being able to show how you have found an edge in your research or career are a couple of components I would highlight.
Right. And of course, everyone can follow Fidelity or PIMCO and abrdn and Mondrian on LinkedIn. And there's lots of communication and interesting sort of research highlights and snippets that are accessible to everyone. And that's probably a good way to sharpen your knowledge about the firm ahead of the interview. But Devin, would you interview people into the grad scheme who haven't had an internship experience or any direct experience in the investment industry?
Yes, we would certainly interview folks that don't have any direct experience, but I will say that definitely some, because they are such highly sought after positions, being able to show in some way your interest through an investment club or just something, even however small it is, being able to make your resume stand out would definitely give you a leg up in the process.
Anyone else want to comment on this point? In terms of not having internship experiences or any foundation in investment management?
Yeah, I think so. When we look at people from an internship perspective in particular, but also for full-time, I mean, you don't have to have that experience, but I think the key thing, especially at internship, I don't think we look for any type of experience, but show some kind of an interest in it. So it doesn't mean that you need to be the CIO of every single club there is out there, but if you've got nothing on your CV, it's just going to make it a little bit more challenging to show your interest. That being said, you could be, I would say show commitment to anything that you do. So if you have a high level of commitment to a different type of activities, that's what's going to be interesting to us, that we're interested in people who are passionate, who follow their dreams or their desires, and who get excited about things. So being part of 20 things but nothing really is more difficult to really show an interest. So if you've got 3 things but you're extremely well versed in all those 3 things, that's fine too. Just then show how you want to apply that passion to then our industry or whatever you're going to be doing next as an intern or as a full-timer.
That's great. And I think absolutely versatility and curiosity are 2 of the sure thing sort of characteristics that successful investors have. And you also really need to have a sense of risk and risk appetite, because one thing that's always going to be true about investments is that they can go up and they can go down. And over the long term, we all hope to make better decisions than average, but in the short term, there will be ups and downs. And it's really important that you can think through that yourself, and you can also demonstrate in your interviews that you understand risk taking, that you'll be a responsible risk taker, and that you'll be resilient in getting over things that don't work out the way that you would like them to. On that note, we're almost on the hour. Sorry, go ahead.
I think definitely in interviews it's really worth showing that you can be wrong and be comfortable with not knowing everything. I think humility is a really important part of the job, because you'll be told, whether it's you valued stocks wrong or you haven't estimated something correctly, you won't be right all the time. So I think demonstrating that you are comfortable with not always being right and showing the limits of your knowledge, I think is really worth doing as well.
That's super helpful. In the 4 minutes we have available, maybe there's just one thing that you can say about your firm and the graduate program that people should walk away with and keep in mind as they think about recruiting. What is the one most helpful thing they could do to advance themselves in the recruiting pipeline? Andreou, I'll start with you.
So yeah, I think Aberdeen is always sort of open for new applications. They hire every year, so please apply if the firm does interest you. There's a range of different functions that you can apply to. I think for Aberdeen's perspective, again, this has been said before, but try and think about who you are as a person rather than knowing everything about how a bond works versus how a loan works, because that's something you learn on the job. So try and think of examples where you've shown communication, where you've shown teamwork, because at the end of the day, a lot of these skills are transferable, and it's part of the reason people hire from across different degrees, because you use those similar skills across history or physics or finance, whatever that be. So I would say keep that in mind when you're applying, and feel free to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn, whatever. And I think, if you give them my details, that'd be great. If anybody wants to apply and wants some advice. But yeah, good luck.
That's great. Thank you, Andreou. Thank you very much. Rebecca, what's the one thing that would count strongly for Mondrian in the application for the grad scheme?
I would just say be curious. Do your research of the firm, do your research of the program. What do we do, and what is it you want to do here? Show us what your ambitions are. If you're looking to be an equity analyst, tell us that, and tell us how being on the Mondrian graduate program is going to help you get there. I would say do your research of the firm and the research of the program, and then be prepared to show us, what you've done either at university or in other internships or roles, what you've done there that's going to be relevant at Mondrian.
What's the best way to research Mondrian?
I would say the website. We also use LinkedIn as well to publish articles about what's been going on. So there's a lot of talk about Mondrian about green bonds and ESG. So all of our articles and webinars that we do are all posted on there. So they're quite interesting to read or watch, especially talk about in interviews as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And Devin, how long should a CV be? That question just came in, and I thought it would be a good one to send to you. What's the right size of a CV these days?
The right size is no more than 1 page.
Good, that has not changed. I'm pleased to hear that.
So I definitely would encourage you to keep it to a page, because I know I will keep scrolling, but if you think about a recruiter only spends a couple minutes looking at your resume, so you want to make sure you're highlighting what's most important to you, what you really want the recruiter to take away from your experiences and your passion. So no need to go over a page for a resume.
Thank you. Thank you. Nikki, the one thing for PIMCO?
Apply.
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 Apply. I thought you said
apply. No, apply. Apply. Definitely apply. That's a key thing. I think if you have doubts, because a lot of people don't apply because they're scared and they're umming and ahhing, and you worry about it. When in doubt, just apply. And I think Rebecca gives some great tips about how to prepare. I would also don't hesitate. Once you've applied, if you've been called in, if you want to speak to someone at the firm, ask the recruiter to see if that is possible. I know we do it. If it's possible to speak to someone from the team to make sure you understand the team well.
Thank you, Nikki. Anna, you have the last word on this.
Sure. So I think long-term differentiated thinking is really important at FMR. So, we're a long-term investor. So, if you're only thinking about things on the quarter, then, FMR might not be the right fit. And I think showing that you're differentiated could mean that you're using different data sources or just thinking about companies slightly differently to other people, I think is good advice.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. We're on the hour. The panel discussion was great. I hope everyone who joined learned something. I certainly did. And please don't forget that we have the internship program for 2022 closing in a week. Everything is on our website. For those of you that had questions about writing cover letters and CVs, GAIN has separate workshops for that. So just look in the calendar and we can be sure to help you on that. And once again, thanks to our wonderful panelists. Really enjoyed talking with you. And I wish everyone a good evening. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Thanks.
Everyone.
Bye.
Good luck.